Persona is a series of games I fell in love with the moment I played them. I discovered it because of the character Joker's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I played Persona 3, 4, and 5, but I'm still working up the courage to play 1 and 2, because Persona 1 is just this. The modern Persona series is vastly different than what came before in Persona 1 and 2. Persona used to be what was your typical JRPG and niche franchise, but gained a lot of popularity from Persona 5's release in 2017. I'm talking about Persona 4 today. It just so happens that Atlus is in love with the game and continues to make way too many spin-offs for it. The modern Persona series starting from Persona 3 to 5 have sort of intertwined two main parts of the game. The social simulator, which is where you strengthen your bonds with teammates and people you meet around town, then the dungeon crawler portion. Another thing to note is that all the modern Persona games aren't connected. The most you'll get are some little references to the other games, but there's no reason to force yourself to play one of them in order to play the rest. If you've never played a Persona game, there will be spoilers, so this is your last warning to click off. If you are watching the video anyway, enjoy it because it'll be a long one. Also, this is my first in-depth review, so feedback would be appreciated. The game introduces you to the main character, Yu Narukami, a transfer student who went to live in Inaba with his uncle Ryotaro Dojima and cousin Nanako for 1 year because his parents had to go on a business trip overseas. On the train ride, he has a mysterious dream about a long-nosed man named Igor in a place called the Velvet Room. The three of them head to the gas station to get their car filled up on their way home. Narukami shakes hands with the attendant as he is offered a part-time job. He suddenly feels sick but brushes it off as car sickness. At the Dojima house, the news talks about the scandal between his secretary Taro Namatame, his wife Misuzu Hiragi, and an announcer Mayumi Yamano, which Namatame had an alleged affair with. The next day, Narukami officially transfers to his new school, Yasugami High. Narukami becomes familiar with some of his classmates, Chie Satonaka, Yukiko Amagi, and Yosuke Hanamura. After class ends, an announcement comes on saying that they are to remain in the school for the time being because of an incident that occurred nearby. It turns out a dead body was found hanging on a telephone pole. When Narukami and his new friends are on their way home, they pass by the crime scene where they find his uncle Dojima, a detective who is investigating the incident with his partner Adachi. Later that night, it is revealed that the body found hanging was TV announcer Mayumi Yamano. Finding this out sends the town into a bit of a shock. The very next day, rumors started going around about a mysterious channel that appeared if you looked into a blank TV on a rainy night. It supposedly told you your soulmate. This channel was called the Midnight Channel. Considering there wasn't much to do in the town of Inaba, everyone decided to try it later that night. To Narukami's surprise, he saw a woman appear that looked like a student from the high school fighting for her life. Narukami ends up having another headache with a strange voice spouting nonsensical words. He then tries touching the TV out of curiosity, and in doing so, he sticks his hand right through the screen. Narukami and his friends talk about what they saw on the Midnight Channel the next day. When Chie finds out that Yosuke saw the same person on the TV, she wonders why they both would have the same soulmate. Narukami mentions what happened to him, and they both laughed it off. Because of this, Yosuke and Chie both get the idea to check out the electronics section at Junes. Junes is basically a large grocery store similar to a Walmart or Costco, where Yosuke works at. While Yosuke is showing Chie the TVs, Narukami decides to stick his hand inside the big one. Once Yosuke notices, Narukami then sticks his whole upper body in. Yosuke and Chie begin panicking and accidentally push themselves inside and end up in the foggy TV world. While searching for a way out, they come across an ominous room filled with ripped posters and a scarf in the shape of a noose. They stumble back and meet an entity shaped like a teddy bear, weirdly enough named Teddy. Teddy summons a stack of TVs into existence and pushes the trio into them. The three of them fall back into reality and decide to go home for the day, hoping they'll forget what happened. The student who reported the body, Saki Kanishi, was found dead the next day exactly the same way the announcer was. Since Yosuke had feelings for her, he begins to wonder why it happened. He thought about the possibility that maybe the TV world has something to do with it. Yosuke then rushes to Junes to investigate. Narukami decides to come along and help, with Chie staying behind to be their lifeline. When they enter the TV world, Narukami and Yosuke run into Teddy again. Yosuke's theory is proven when Teddy tries to blame the two for causing all the disturbances in his world when two people were thrown inside. Teddy tells them that the weather in the real world and the TV world are connected. When the fog appears in the real world, it lifts inside the TV world. When that happens, anyone inside will be killed by creatures named shadows. The three of them come up with a theory that someone is pushing people inside the TV intentionally in order to kill them. Teddy gives the pair a pair of glasses that lifts the fog for anyone who wears them in order to help them navigate through the world. Teddy proceeds to take the two towards the place where he sensed Saki before she was inevitably killed. It ends up being a part of the shopping district that leads to the liquor store where she and her family resided. As they were heading inside the store, shadows appeared and attempted to attack the group. Narukami hears the same strange voice from earlier call out to him again, and it's at this point where he says the famous words "persona" and defeats the shadows. Let's step back a bit and talk about the game's combat. A persona is the distinct connection to one's personality. A persona will take the form of creatures in order to aid the user in battle. Persona's combat is like your typical JRPG with a turn-based formula. Unlike typical JRPGs, the modern games, starting with Persona 3, have used a system called the One More system. Basically, when the protagonist or party member happens to strike an enemy's elemental weakness, it gives them a one more, which allows them to perform an extra action. If all enemies are knocked down, you're able to perform an action called an all-out attack, dealing massive damage to all enemies. When striking a downed enemy, there will be a chance to dizzy them, which makes them sit out for 2 turns. This is useful, but it's a pain to deal with if used against your party. There's also a little minigame that has a chance to occur after each battle called Shuffle Time. When this happens, you will have a choice to pick from an assortment of cards that lie in front of you. These can range from EXP and money to new personas. The goal of this is to grab as many cards as possible in order to have a sweet bonus occur. This happens when all cards are picked and allows you to pick up more cards at the beginning of the next time around. Alright, back to the game. In the liquor store, Yosuke learns how much Saki hated him. She only treated him nicely because Yosuke was the son of the manager of Junes. Since Junes first opened in Inaba, it affected the shopping district in a negative way, forcing Saki to get a job there to support her family. She was shunned by not only her family, but neighbors around her for even working there. In the middle of Yosuke's grief, he was interrupted by himself, or rather his shadow. The shadows are a hidden side of everyone that reveal their insecurities about themselves that are neglected and hidden deep within them. Yosuke's shadow expresses how he is afraid of being isolated and alone and only pretends to be carefree. He only pretended to care to a certain extent so he could investigate and play into his selfish desire to become a hero so people would like him. Yosuke denies all of what his shadow says, and that makes his shadow go berserk and try to kill Narukami. After his shadow is defeated, Yosuke still tries to deny it, but with the help of his friends around him, he owned up to what his shadow said and knew that everything said was true. Because Yosuke was able to accept his other self and manifest it into his persona, Jiraiya. Teddy then explains that the announcer and Saki were both killed by their other self because they were inside the TV for too long. Yosuke theorizes that if they could find out who has been thrown into the TV, then they could save them before the fog lifts. From then on, the investigation team was formed. They are to save whoever they see appear on the Midnight Channel by going inside the TV and figure out who the culprit is behind the case. As you venture into the television to save the people who have been kidnapped, you will travel through a series of dungeons. Aesthetically, they are all completely different, whether it's the look of it or the music. The dungeons, however, are randomly generated floors. This means that the game will choose from existing pieces of level geometry and put them together to form a floor. The only issue with this is that each floor will look similar in some way no matter which dungeon you are in. This can be compared to that of Tartarus in Persona 3 or Mementos in Persona 5. Since Narukami is known as a wild card, that means he is the only one that holds the capability to wield multiple personas. During the investigation, you'll have the ability to go to the Velvet Room. This is a place where you are able to fuse existing personas into the other ones. When fusing a persona, there are certain skills that can be inherited from the demons used to craft that persona. Since fusion is a real pain, just look it up. It'll save you time and allow you to keep your sanity. The game gives you a search function where it takes the personas in your party and gives you a list of all the ones you can craft. My favorite persona in the game just so happens to be one of the most broken ones, that being Yoshitsune. Reason being? Hasatobi. Need I say more? The attendant to your right is Margaret, the person who keeps track of the personas you've registered in the compendium. Kinda think of it as the Pokédex, except you can summon the registered version into your inventory whenever you'd like. For a small amount of money, of course. The one to the left is Marie. She allows you to register skill cards so you can buy them whenever you'd want. She is also a social link, which in itself is its own story that pertains to the plot later in the game if you decide to complete it. In Persona 4, during the time you are inside the TV world, you act as a normal student, doing things like studying, reading, and even working. As you wait for the plot to progress, you can work on these things called social stats. Social stats are used to help start social links and do different activities. These come in 5 different attributes: knowledge, expression, understanding, courage, and diligence. So the higher your diligence, the longer you can fish for, and the more courage you have will give you the ability to ask a girl for her number straight out. Social links are pretty beneficial to the dungeon crawling portion of the game, as they can give you certain abilities to help you. This includes something like increased fusion EXP of a persona of that specific arcana. If I used Yosuke as an example, he is the Magician Arcana. Say I were to fuse Jack Frost, I will have more EXP given to it because of my social link rank with Yosuke. Social links are little stories that focus on a specific character, whether it be your party member or someone you met by exploring the town. There are 23 social links in the game, but only 20 are ones you can actually strengthen on your own, as the other 3 progress automatically. Each social link is 10 ranks. While hanging out with that person, there are specific choices the game gives you to further your bond with that character. If you want to progress faster, then you will need to have a persona of that character's arcana in your inventory. Again, using Yosuke as an example, if I have Pixie in my inventory, I'll be given a boost in the choices I pick to help further my relationship with him. I won't be going over each social link in a specific order, just the ones I started first on an all social links run. As mentioned earlier, she is one of the Velvet Room attendants and is a new character introduced in Persona 4 Golden. Her story starts off as Margaret having you take her out and explore Inaba. Marie mentions to Narukami that she doesn't have any memories and the only thing in her possession was a bamboo comb. Narukami continues to help Marie regain her memories by taking her to places that he thinks could tell her more about the comb's origins. Marie finds out that the comb could be a symbol of separation after the owner at Tetsumi Textiles explained it to her. As Marie begins to give up on trying to find her old memories, Narukami helps her realize that she doesn't need them as long as she can make new ones. Marie's social link is alright, but considering a lot of people dislike Marie's inclusion, you will likely have to already like Marie in order to like the social link. Marie's story is only one side of something bigger when she becomes more relevant in the plot near the end of the game. The 2 characters of the social link, Ko and Daisuke, are both athletes that are in the basketball and soccer team respectively. Daisuke opens up to Narukami when Ko begins to start feeling depressed. He doesn't stay at practice for long periods of time and even ditches some days. He tells him that Ko's family wants him to give up the sport because his grandma thinks it's barbaric. Narukami later finds out that Ko is actually adopted just so he could carry the Ichijo name since his adopted parents were unable to have children. His adopted parents ended up having a kid not too long after adopting Ko and paid less attention to him. He felt like it was for the best that they stopped paying attention to him since he wasn't blood related. Daisuke plans a basketball game to help make Ko feel better about himself. After losing the game, Ko feels as if he has no purpose left for the Ichijo family and feels replaced. He decides to stop by the orphanage he was from to see if he could find his purpose. Ko comes back with a letter written by the person who left him there, which explains that his parents named him Ko so he would prioritize his health because his parents weren't so fortunate and passed away shortly after giving him up. Ko later realized that the letter was written by the orphanage to make him feel better. He didn't really care whether it was real or not, it made him happy regardless. Ko realized that the people around him form his purpose in life. Ko later bites the bullet and talks to his family about his feelings, and they told him that they took less interest because all his family wanted was for him to be happy. Ko's story is one that a lot of people can relate to, which makes a story like his great. You were told all about the struggles that someone like Ko could be fearful of. The only issue is that you never get to see any of what Ko deals with firsthand. Like I said earlier, you were told about everything. It's from Narukami's perspective instead of Ko's. Daisuke is the other character you can choose to hang out with if you decided to not choose Ko. Narukami joins the team and has shown little to no respect from the team members. Daisuke sticks up for Narukami and begins to teach him how to play soccer. Later, Daisuke begins to show his resentment towards women by giving all of them the cold shoulder. Once the team sees Narukami's soccer skills, Daisuke begins to start half-assing everything and does not care as much for soccer. Ko tells Narukami why he thinks Daisuke's attitude towards women has changed. Ko believes Daisuke's resentment stems from a breakup he went through in middle school, where he refused to become intimate in any way with his girlfriend. Ko sets up a group blind date to help Daisuke get over this. Ko's plan backfires as he confronts Daisuke about his problem. Daisuke admits that he is afraid of being misunderstood and rejected and still has feelings for his ex. Ko wants Daisuke to talk to his ex in order for the burden he's carrying to be lifted. Once Daisuke had the chance to speak to her, he started to feel really good about himself. He became serious about practicing again and tried as hard as he could. Both Ko's and Daisuke's stories were great because they are both extremely relatable for different types of people. Daisuke's story does a better job at showing what he's going through instead of it just being told to you like Ko's. My only issue with both of these is that the real story doesn't really begin until you are at rank 6 out of 10 with them. Other than that though, I really enjoyed them both. I preferred Ko's, but Daisuke's isn't bad. The Sun's social link is like the strength. There are 2 characters you can choose from. However, unlike Ko and Daisuke, the 2 characters of the Sun Arcana are completely separate from each other. If you choose the Drama Club, you'll be introduced to Yumi Ozawa. Shortly after joining the Drama Club, Yumi finds out that her mother had collapsed and heads to the hospital immediately, with Narukami following close behind. At the hospital, Yumi finds out that it wasn't her mother that collapsed, but her father. Yumi's mother had lied to her in order to get Yumi to see her father. Yumi's mother knew she wouldn't have come if the truth was told, so a lie was necessary. Yumi tells Narukami that she hates her father because he left her family in order to be with someone else. Because of her situation, Yumi stops coming to practice and goes to the hospital to see her father and later her mother, as she also ends up collapsing. As Yumi visits her father more, she becomes conflicted on her opinion of him because he wants to reconnect with his daughter before the inevitable happens. Yumi doesn't want to forgive her father for abandoning her family, but becomes thankful for being brought into the world when her father does pass away. Yumi begins to come to practice again, but doesn't participate in it or even realize that practice had ended until Narukami points it out to her. Yumi began to think of her acting as a way to escape into her own world and avoid the sadness she carries with her. Yumi quits the drama club so she can focus on supporting her mother. She thanks Narukami for being there for her when she needed someone. Unlike the other social links, Narukami didn't really have any choices that could alter much of the events that happened. Just like Yumi said, he was there when she needed someone the most. If you decide to, you can choose to join the music club and be introduced to Ayane, who is a first-year trombone player. Ayane tells Narukami that she believes she has no talent and isn't ever picked for performances, she only schedules them. When the other trombone player in the club injures his arm, all eyes are thrust upon Ayane, asking if she wants to take his place. Ayane tells Narukami how much she's been practicing just so she can live up to the expectations set by her peers. On the day of the performance, the other trombone player comes back and is able to fill the role again. Despite everyone already being fine with Ayane taking the role, even Takeru, the original trombone player, Ayane gives the role back to him. She essentially tortured herself over this decision. Ayane tells Narukami that she wants to try and be more selfish in order for her to get what she wants in life. She wants to learn to speak her mind and take opportunities when they arise instead of stepping down and letting other people take them for her. Ayane's was alright. The issues she faces are very common, but they aren't really addressed until the very end of her social link. Or rank 9 out of 10. Dojima's daughter, Nanako, is the Justice Arcana. I'll be talking about Dojima and Nanako's social link together since they sorta intertwine. Nanako is Narukami's 7-year-old cousin and Dojima's daughter who you meet at the beginning of the game. Narukami begins to bond with her after taking her to Junes with your friends. Nanako spent a lot of her time at home by herself because Dojima was becoming more busy with the Inaba murder case. Nanako begins to believe that Dojima thinks that doing his job is more important than spending time with her, and she thinks that he doesn't love her. One night, Nanako brings up a parent-teacher interview survey with Narukami and she explains that she's afraid her dad won't be able to come. After Nanako tells Dojima, he says that he doesn't know when he'd be able to do one. Hearing this, Nanako rushes out of the house and runs away, saying that he isn't her real father. After Dojima and Narukami find Nanako, Dojima would like Narukami to speak with her. Nanako believes that her dad has forgotten about her mother because he doesn't ever speak about her or have any photos of her around the house. Dojima filled out the parent-teacher interview saying that they could call him any time they'd want him there. Narukami shows Nanako the picture of them as a family that was with the piece of paper. Once Nanako sees the photo, she is finally able to understand that her father is lonely. Nanako now knows that she has to work hard on making her dad feel less lonely and support each other. Considering Nanako is only a young child, the absence of her father took a huge toll on her because she thought of it as her being neglected and that his job was more important than spending time with her. Dojima's side of the story works as a way to give the player more insight into the problems Dojima faces being Nanako's father. Narukami learns that Dojima carries a massive burden in his life and has been unable to play with Nanako because of how busy he is with an old case he's obsessed with. He left raising her up to his wife who had passed away, so raising her is hard for him because of the pain he has to carry. With the help of Narukami, Dojima is able to open up to him about his wife's death in a hit-and-run accident. He has been left with the responsibility of solving it in his own time. Dojima uses this as an excuse to not spend time with Nanako. After Dojima got a phone call, he knew that no new advances had occurred in the case. He vents to Narukami that he is afraid to face Nanako in reality. He is stuck in the past and refuses to accept the death of his wife. Dojima was afraid of taking Narukami in because he was fearful that they were going to become a family again and was just going to lose it. Dojima draws the line and wants to make sure the people closest to him know how important they are. Dojima gives Narukami a coffee mug to show that he is officially part of the Dojima family. Dojima's social link complements Nanako's. It shows how Dojima's obsessions and fear of facing reality were ruining the relationship between him and Nanako.
This town is my town. It's the place where you and Nanako live. That's why I'm gonna live on, protecting this place. As a detective, as a father.
The Fox social link isn't even much of one. It's basically just getting you to complete a bunch of side quests that are all pretty easy. It really helps you while navigating through the TV world though. It allows you to refill the entire party's SP for a small or massive fee. Once the social link has reached its maximum rank, the Fox will give you the biggest discount he can for refilling SP inside the TV. The Fox also gives the shrine some renovations and allows you to get closer to people faster. This is one that was added in the golden version of Persona 4. It's kinda like how in Persona 5 Royal they added a confidant for Akechi. The purpose of both of them is to get to know the characters more. Adachi is Dojima's partner in the murder case and is always getting scolded by him for opening his mouth about police business and slacking off. Adachi's loose tongue is used to the investigation team's advantage. Adachi almost constantly reveals information regarding the case, helping them out accidentally. During the social link, you learn about how Adachi lives, finding out that he lives alone, drinks, and is unable to cook, making his diet very non-nutritional. Hearing this, Narukami decides to invite him over for dinner to cook for him. Adachi is somewhat reluctant to accept the invitation. He comes over the following night since he has the time. The more Narukami spends with Adachi, the more he learns that Adachi really cares for his safety and well-being. Adachi's social link is one that I personally enjoy a lot. Adachi has a bit of a superiority complex and enjoys being alone because he can't connect with the people around him on a personal level. Margaret's social link is sorta just like the Fox's. It's all about completing requests that aren't that difficult. In this case, it's supposed to test your fusion skills, but I and most others just looked it up so it would be easier. One of the part-time jobs Narukami is able to take during the game is one at a daycare. While working there, he gets to know a child named Yuta and his mother Eri. Eri tells Narukami how complicated her relationship with her stepson Yuta is, and doesn't want to put the effort into changing the state of her relationship because they aren't blood related. Eri's husband is out on a business trip, so it's just them alone in the house. Eri's husband already had Yuta before they were married, but she didn't find out about him until the day of. Eri thought she'd enjoy being a stay-at-home mom so she could take care of Yuta, but instead, Eri watches shows on TV that say fate is determined from birth and can't be changed. She believes that any effort put towards deepening the relationship between the two of them would be pointless. Narukami gets an idea of what the relationship is like from Yuta's perspective, and they seem to be growing more distant from each other. It turns out that they lack basic communication, even something as simple as Yuta asking to use the TV. Narukami tells Eri about a children's show Phoenix Ranger Featherman R. After hearing this, Eri gets the idea to buy a toy for Yuta. Eri doing this helped improve their relationship a little because Yuta asks Narukami what he can do to repay her kindness. Eri feels a little happy, but that doesn't last for too long, as Yuta's teacher talks to Eri about how Yuta is a violent student with poor grades. As Eri buys into the teacher's gossip, she begins to cry. Yuta thinks Narukami was bullying her and beats the shit out of him. Narukami's pain somehow brought Eri and Yuta closer together as he refers to Eri as mom for the first time. Eri admits to Narukami that Yuta is a sweet boy. She believed all the labels people gave him because she wasn't looking at him through her own eyes. Eri was afraid to face Yuta and bond with him because she wasn't his biological mother. Yuta tells Narukami that he will be pulled from the daycare because he wanted more time to become closer with Eri. Eri's social link has some great ideas thrown into it, but the only issue with it is how Yuta seemed to want to bond more with Eri than what she did to try and bond with him. Eri originally cared more for her belief that fate wasn't something that could change, rather than trying whatever she could to help the two bond. This one is initiated by working at night as a janitor at the hospital. Sayoko is one of the nurses working there and begins to force her affection onto Narukami. She opens up to him about her loneliness as she often gets attached to the patients she tends to. Sayoko tells Narukami about a relationship she had with one of the doctors at another hospital. She was forced to transfer to a different hospital after the doctor's wife had found out. Sayoko finds out that a past patient from the hospital she used to work at had passed away. She blames herself for it and begins to overwork herself. Sayoko later collapses from exhaustion. Narukami is able to support her in her hour of need. Sayoko was able to tell Narukami about how overworking herself was just an excuse in order to run away from her problems. Sayoko tells Narukami that she has grown to hate hospitals and became lonely because of her issues with getting too attached to patients. Sayoko admits that she lost sight of her original goal and remembers why she wanted to become a nurse in the first place. She decides to quit working in the hospital and follow her own path so she can focus on finding herself and helping people. The social link was okay. The story only really began around rank 5 out of 10 and relies on whether or not Sayoko's first impression really stuck with you. I is the team manager for either the basketball or soccer team depending on which one you chose. If your courage is high enough, I will ask you to skip class with her citing her social link. I is someone who cares about her appearance over her attitude towards others. I rejects someone who asks her out because he wasn't very attractive. One day when Narukami is hanging out with the respective member of the Strength Arcana that was chosen and the fellow members of the team, they start gossiping about sensitive stuff regarding Ai. Narukami and Ko, in my case, tells the members of the team off for making up stuff behind her back. Ai walks by after hearing the conversation and thanks Narukami for standing up for her. Ai reveals to Narukami that she may have feelings for Ko because of the events that took place prior, and wants to help him find out what kind of girl Ko is into. It turns out that Ko is into nice girls and has a crush on Chie. After Ai heard this information, Narukami comes back up to the roof to see Ai devastated and threatening to commit suicide. With the help of Narukami, Ai is able to reconsider her decision and opens up to him about her past. It turns out that Ai used to be bullied because she was overweight and considered gross. So when her family came into money, they moved to Inaba and Ai studied fashion and dieting to try and make herself as likable as possible. Ai admits to Narukami that she only ditched school and cared about her appearance just to get attention. Ai drops the ideal girl act she made for herself and lets her old self roam free again. Ai's social link is an interesting one. I actually enjoyed it near the end. It shows how one's insecurities can completely change a person. I think Atlas tried way too hard to make Ai seem like an insufferable asshole, but in turn it shows how much she changed herself just to be attractive. If you remember the name Kenichi, you'll know that Naoki's last name is the same because he is the little brother of one of the original 2 murder victims, Saki Kenichi. Because he is dealing with the loss of his sister, everyone continues to pity him and give him special treatment that he really hates. Naoki opens up to Narukami because he is the only one that speaks to him honestly. Everyone around him isn't happy unless Naoki is constantly looking like a victim. A local housewife pities Naoki one day and tells him he shouldn't be wandering about or he could end up like his sister. Narukami tells the woman off for talking to Naoki like that, which she is thankful for. Naoki was able to realize his sister was truly gone once he realized that his cream puffs that his sister would usually eat stayed in the fridge and expired. One day, Naoki takes Narukami to the scene of his sister's death. Narukami is able to help Naoki release all of the pent-up feelings he had and is finally able to mourn for his sister. Naoki later brings Narukami to the riverbank and tells him that he has finally been able to accept his sister's death. He is going to help out with the family business and try to become a competitor to Jeunesse. Naoki's social link is a great story and reinforces the damages the killer has caused to people like Naoki. Hisano is an elderly woman who Narukami meets while working part-time at the hospital. Hisano is technically an automatic social link as the choices you pick don't actually matter. Hisano is an old woman whose husband passed away very recently. She reveals to Narukami that she thinks of herself as death without giving a reason as to why. Hisano tells Narukami all about how she and her husband met. Hisano's husband was an actor who came to Inaba once a year for a show. He and Hisano managed to hit it off and began sending letters to each other. Her husband later quit working his acting job and moved to Inaba to marry Hisano. Not long after they got married, Hisano's husband began suffering from Alzheimer's. It got so bad that she eventually wished for his death because he had completely forgotten who she was. The reason Hisano thought she was death itself was because she wished for her husband to pass away.
I loved him this much. And because I loved him, it saddened me that he forgot my love.
Hisano comes to terms with her husband's death and decides to face the truth. She isn't death itself. Hisano decides to live out the rest of her life as the Hisano her husband loved. Hisano's story is very personal, which makes one like hers memorable. Hisano kept reiterating that she grew to hate her husband because of his illness that took the man she loved away from her. After she came to terms with her husband's passing, she was able to realize how much she actually loved him. The time they spent together showed that dedication. Shu is a kid who strives to always be at the top. Narukami was hired to tutor him in the evening because cram school wasn't helping. When Narukami first meets Shu, his mother is constantly praising him for how good he always does in school. As Narukami continues to tutor Shu, he opens up to Narukami a little and mentions a new transfer student in his class. Apparently the transfer student is looked down upon and bullied because they are unable to beat Shu's grades. As Narukami tutors Shu more, he becomes more nervous about an upcoming test. He brushes it off as him being exhausted. The next time Narukami tutors Shu, he is about to tell Narukami something when his mom comes in and pushes him out of the house. Narukami comes back the next time and realizes that Shu looks depressed. Narukami looks around and realizes that Shu's birthday is circled on the calendar. Shu explains that he forgot about his own birthday and his mother likely did as well. Narukami calls up his friends and sets up a party for Shu. After the party, Shu tells Narukami how he cheated on that test because of how nervous he was. It turns out that Shu wasn't telling the truth about the transfer student. He was actually really good at everything because the school they came from was far ahead. Shu cheated on the test so everyone would stop making fun of him for not being number 1. He was worried the only way he could be loved by his mom was if he was number 1. Shu's mom didn't forget about his birthday and wanted to start over their relationship together so they could be happier. Shu realized that his mother would love him no matter what. Shu's social link is actually one of my favorites. It shows how Shu was obsessed with being at the top so much that he damaged his own future. He thought being number 1 was the only reason his mother continued loving him. The party members' social links act as the development for the characters. The plot of the game up until a certain point will be explained throughout the character's analysis. Yosuke is the first party member, who meets Narukami shortly after he transfers to Yasogami High. Since it's pretty obvious that Yosuke had feelings for Saki even after her passing, this causes him to become very protective of her. He eventually erupts into anger at 2 employees for bad-mouthing her. Yosuke wanted to forget about Saki, his boring life, and the town he hated, which is why he got so excited when the murders started occurring. With the help and support Narukami gave him, Yosuke realizes that he's special to the people around him, and begins to love the town of Inaba. Yosuke brings Narukami down to the river, and reveals the doubts he had about him. Yosuke didn't trust Narukami originally, and was incredibly jealous of him. In order for Yosuke to be equal and settle his doubts, he wanted Narukami to beat it out of him, so the two brawled it out so he could once again see clearly. Afterwards, Yosuke reveals that he wants to live every day with a smile holding the bonds he now shares close to him. His social link shows how deep the bond between him and Narukami is. Yosuke is someone who is loyal to his friends and cares deeply about them. Chie is the third party member, one of Narukami's friends who sits next to him in class. Chie is someone whose strength lies in her loyalty to her friends. When Yukiko is revealed to be the first person to have been kidnapped, Chie's first thought was to head into the TV and face danger head on just to save her best friend. Even though she didn't possess the power of Persona, she didn't care about the warnings Narukami and Yosuke gave her. Chie rushes in once she hears her best friend's voice, not realizing it's actually Yukiko's shadow. Yukiko's shadow expresses her dependence on Chie to protect her and how weak she really is. Hearing Yukiko's true feelings brings out Chie's shadow, revealing her hidden flaws. Chie is very jealous of Yukiko and thinks that she is better than her. She loves the feeling of complete total dependence. Chie denies her shadow, turning it into a female sitting on top of Yasogami High students dressed as a dominatrix. This symbolizes her jealousy and the need to control her friend. Once her shadow is defeated, she is able to accept it because of the support from her friends.
Yeah, I kinda get it now. A side of me I couldn't forgive, that I tried to ignore. But you still exist. You're a part of me.
Her shadow turns into her persona, Tomoe. Chie's social link starts off with her and Narukami training to get stronger, during which Chie tells Narukami how Yukiko and her met. She explains how Yukiko ran away from home and how she found her on the side of the road with a stray dog because she wasn't allowed to have pets. Chie tried her best to cheer Yukiko up, making them friends. From that moment, she vowed to protect Yukiko. Chie wanted to be Yukiko's friend but lost sight of this, only becoming someone Yukiko could depend on. After the time Chie spent with Narukami, she was able to learn what her power was really used for. She realized that it's best used to protect everyone she cares about. Chie's arc isn't terrible, but it's pretty shitty compared to the other party members. Yukiko is the 4th party member and runs a famous hot springs inn with her family. Because Yukiko is expected to inherit the inn, she declines invites to hang out with friends, leaves early or even skips school in order to work. Since the original murder victim, Mayumi Yamano, stayed at the Amagi Inn, Yukiko had been getting a lot of unwanted media attention. Narukami and the others ended up seeing Yukiko featured on the Midnight Channel in front of a castle acting very unusual. It turns out that that's her shadow revealing her hidden feelings. Yukiko feels trapped and hates that she doesn't get to decide her future. so she wants her prince to come and take her away. Yukiko's shadow transforms into a bird in a cage once her real-world counterpart denies her shadow. Once Yukiko is able to accept her true self, it turns into her persona, Kanahana Sakuya. In Yukiko's social link, she discusses with Narukami about leaving Inaba and taking control of her future, separating her from just being the Amagi in heir. Yukiko decides that she wants to study interior decorating. As Yukiko spends more time with Narukami, it gets harder for her to leave the town. She doesn't want to hurt all the people who helped and spent so much time with her. After a reporter threatens to slander the inn on television, Yukiko has a sudden outburst rekindling her love for the inn. Yukiko decides to not leave Inaba, wanting to inherit the inn. Yukiko wanted to be the one to decide what she wanted in life. Yukiko's arc is a good but rather simple story. It's about Yukiko wanting to decide her own fate in life and not give in to it being forced upon her because of family tradition. Kanji is the 5th party member and is the tough guy of the group. Kanji is an only child because of his father's passing. Also, his mom runs a store called Tatsumi Textiles. Kanji took an entire biker gang down and appeared in a documentary on TV because of it. His shadow appears on the Midnight Channel, portraying Kanji as a completely different person. After the group makes their way to Kanji, his shadow reveals his hatred for girls because of how arrogant and self-centered they can be. It's because of Kanji's more feminine interests like sewing that they made fun of him and make him out to seem like some sort of creep. Kanji's idea of being a real man stems from the mindset that men can't have any feminine interests. Once Kanji's shadow is defeated, instead of it disappearing right away, Kanji still rejects it until it cries out for someone to accept him for who he is. Kanji proceeds to punch his shadow. Kanji doesn't care about who it is, he just doesn't want to be rejected. Kanji tries to make people hate him. If everyone already hates him, then he doesn't have to worry about going through the pain of rejection again. Kanji is able to accept his shadow, transforming it into Take Mikazuchi. Early on in his social link, there is this boy who lost his friend's stuffed bunny. The boy's friend told him that if he was a real man then he wouldn't have a doll made for girls. The boy threw it away and felt guilty afterwards. Kanji took the boy back to the river to try and search for the doll. After coming up empty-handed, Kanji decides to get the boy another bunny and tell the boy to apologize to their friend, which the bunny came from. The next time Kanji sees the boy, Kanji gives him a bunny of his own and one for the girl who lost hers. Kanji was expecting the boy to call him a creep after admitting that he made the dolls, but was instead told that he was really cool. Kanji proceeds to make more dolls for the boy because he knew loads of people who wanted one. Next, Kanji knew that he needed to tackle his weak heart in order to become strong. He is later approached by the police and because of Kanji's appearance, they blame him for bullying a small child. Kanji tells the officer the truth and owns up to his own interests. Kanji tells Narukami about what his dad told him before he passed.
Dad told me something right before he died. If you're a man, you have to become strong. Felt like he was telling me I wasn't a real man. Pissed me off. So I changed my looks and pushed myself away from people. Fighting gangs, thinking I was keeping mom safe, and even trying to catch the killer. I was just being stubborn.
Kanji later is able to finally understand what it means to be a man. It's not about being strong physically or what your interests are that makes you a man. It's about being able to be true to yourself and not be afraid to show the world who you are. Kanji even comes up with a set of rules that he'll use in the future, making sure people can understand him. Kanji's arc is incredible. Kanji was afraid of being labeled for his feminine hobbies, so he became overtly masculine and tried to make people hate him. Kanji just wants to be accepted by everyone without the fear of rejection being pressed against him. Rise is the 6th party member and is an idol who decided to take a break and move to Inaba to live with her grandma. Rise's family runs a tofu shop in the shopping district. The team heads over there and finds out how different Rise is compared to on TV. When Rise is thrown into the TV, the group manages to track her down and ends up inside a strip club themed dungeon. Rise's shadow takes the form of a stripper because of her desire for attention. Rise's shadow wants all of the attention on her true personality and not her manufactured idol personality, Rosette. It turns out that Rise deeply dislikes being Rosette and is sick of having to abide by the idol rules to keep selling her image. Rise's acceptance allows her shadow to transform into her persona Himiko. Rise's social link focuses on her coming to terms with her true self. Rise even tells her old manager off for begging her to become an idol again. Once Narukami and Rise become closer, she tells him that when she was younger, she was more introverted. This led to her becoming a target for bullying in school. However, the bullying had stopped once everyone saw her Rosette personality on TV. Rise used her new personality to try and make friends. She later found out that her so-called friends weren't interested in her at all. They only wanted her manufactured personality Rosette. It's not too long after Rise is forgotten about, in favor of a new idol, Kanami Mashita. Rise's old manager comes by and tells Rise that he is Kanami's new manager and she'll be filling in the role Rise was supposed to have in a movie. Rise begins to cry and claims she lost everything in that moment, but thanks to Narukami, he was able to comfort her. Rise later tells Narukami how she originally didn't want to be an idol and started to regret her decision to take a break. Rise realized she was actually running away from her idol self. accepting it as being an aspect of herself. When Narukami leaves in the spring, Rise tells him that she will be returning to showbiz. However, she will show everyone all her personalities. Rise's social link heavily relies on whether you like Rise as a character in order for someone to really enjoy it. She has the "I want your balls" sort of character. She spends most of the game flirting with the protagonist regardless of whether or not you want it. Her social link is alright though. It's all about her accepting her different types of personalities as one. Rise's issue can be very relatable for some people. I just feel like you don't really get to know much about Rise outside of her personality disorder. Naoto is the 7th and final party member who is a young detective prince that came to Inaba in order to help aid the police in their investigation. Naoto was established long before he became a member, as he thought of the issues surrounding the Midnight Channel the same way the investigation team did. He saw it as a sign that the person who appeared on the TV could be the next target to be kidnapped. He even got in touch with Kanji Tatsumi because of his appearance on the Midnight Channel, after the team catches who they think the culprit was. Naoto deduces that the most recent killing, that being Narukami's homeroom teacher, was just a copycat killing because his cause of death was easily identified by the police, something they had been unable to do for the other 2 cases. Naoto puts his life in danger by becoming bait and appearing on the TV, becoming famous just like all the others had become before disappearing. Naoto ends up getting kidnapped and thrown inside the TV. As the team gathers more information on Naoto, it turns out that he is treated as a child because he's a workaholic who is obsessed with solving the case by himself. Once the team locates Naoto, his shadow claims that he has become the people he so despised and has issues with finding his place. Naoto was praised as an ace detective during cases, but would be thrown away as soon as his assistance was no longer needed. Naoto admires the ideal men he sees in detective novels and tries to emulate them. Naoto was never taken seriously at work because Naoto wasn't even a man to begin with. The reason Naoto so desperately tries to become a man, even going so far as to dress like one, is so she can get the treatment she deserves in her more male-dominated line of work. Naoto reveals how her parents were detectives who died when she was young. Her grandfather took her in and helped realize her dream to become a detective. She secretly aided the clients her grandfather was working with and was given the title Junior Detective. Naoto didn't always receive kind words from the people she worked with. They could easily criticize her for being a child. However, she could just be looked down upon further because of her gender. With the help of the investigation team, they are able to help Naoto realize that what she strives for isn't to become a man or grow up, but to accept herself for who she really is. Naoto accepts her shadow, transforming into her persona, Sakuna Hikona. In Naoto's social link, it turns out that the Shirogane estate was robbed and numerous amount of Naoto's possessions were stolen. Naoto receives letters from a phantom thief which gives clues she can use to recover her stolen possessions. Narukami and Naoto both work together to solve the clues given to them. All the items stolen were toys Naoto had made when she was younger, these being things like a watch and a detective badge. One day, Narukami and Naoto come across what appears to be the phantom thief. The man pulls out a knife and tries to pose a threat to Naoto's safety. When Naoto realizes that the thief the phantom thief is holding is a toy, the man runs off. It turns out the phantom thief was actually Naoto's grandpa's secretary. Naoto's grandpa was saddened to see her dedicate all her time to work. He wanted her to remember why she wanted to become a detective in the first place. Naoto admits to Narukami how she took part in trying to solve the Inaba murder case because she wanted to feel accepted and to be wanted. She wanted to become the 5th detective in the Shirogane lineage. The investigation team gave Naoto a reason to stay and helped her accept herself for who she is. Naoto's arc is really cool and interesting. Naoto was able to come to terms with her selfish desire to be accepted and not obsess so much over her work. Teddy is one of the solely automatic social links that progress as you continue through the game. He is introduced in the beginning and lives inside the TV, being comparable to that of the creatures you fight named Shadows. Teddy's loss of memories causes him to strive to find his identity. The only thing he remembers is waking up inside the TV world. As he spends more time with Narukami and his friends, he begins to develop human emotions. He gradually gets lonelier as time passes whenever they return to the real world, leaving him behind. While Rise is accepting her shadow, she says there is no real me, making Teddy question his existence. Teddy's insecurities explode when he applies this to himself. Teddy's identity crisis causes his shadow to appear. His shadow reveals that there is no reason for him to search for anything, as it will just be a pointless effort. Once Teddy is able to face himself, he awoke to his persona, Kintoki Doji. Teddy was soon able to leave the TV world and even grew a human body. According to Teddy, he grew a body in order to score with Chie and Yukiko. Teddy decides to live in the real world and builds a strong relationship with Nanako. Teddy gets concerned when the group takes him to the hospital to be examined and nothing legible shows up on his x-rays. Something terrible occurs in November involving the Dojima family, and Teddy feels guilty about not being able to save them. So he literally disappears because of it. Teddy ends up in a world shrouded in fog and begins to wander through it until he hears the sound of a car stopping. Teddy ends up inside the velvet room where Narukami is at that moment. He tells him everything because he was able to remember his past. It turns out that Teddy was actually just a shadow who awoke to human emotions. He made himself forget he was one and even changed his own appearance so people would like him. But if it wasn't for the help of Narukami and his friends, but most importantly Nanako, Teddy wouldn't have been able to grow past the fact he was a shadow and form his own identity. Those were all the social links in Persona 4 Golden. Most of them were actually really well written and told some pretty interesting stories. The game makes it well known that the bonds you form with your friends are a crucial part of the game's story, which makes tying the character's development to their social links fit almost too well. Every character in Persona 4 has some sort of tie to the struggle of finding out who they really are and striving to find their true identity. This makes me believe this game is more than just the happiest murder mystery ever. Narukami's support gave them a place to belong. To me, the Persona 4 cast really feels like they are close friends. Naoto tells the team that their culprit was able to not only drug, but throw her into the TV within a matter of minutes after ringing the doorbell. Later that day, Narukami comes home to see a letter waiting for him that Nanako had found. The letter read, "Don't rescue anymore." Narukami plans to not show the letter to Dojima as it could put him under police surveillance and discuss it with his friends instead. A few nights later, Dojima comes home with another letter in his hand directed to Yu Narukami. Dojima hands Narukami the suspicious letter and stands by as he reads it. The letter reads, "If you don't stop this time, someone close will be put in and killed." As Dojima's suspicions are proven, he intervenes and takes Narukami to the police station to interrogate him and learn the truth regarding his involvement with the case. He tries to tell Dojima about everything, but because of how absurd the story sounds, he doesn't believe a word. Considering there is a TV in the room, Narukami could have just shown him. At Junes, Yosuke tries to call Narukami to remind him about the Midnight Channel. Since Yosuke couldn't get a hold of him, he decided to call the Dojima household so Nanako would pick up. Nanako tells Yosuke that Narukami got a weird letter and Dojima took him to the police station for questioning. Yosuke, realizing the possibility of it being another warning letter, calls the others to gather everyone. Back at the police station, Narukami checks the Midnight Channel as he is stuck in there for the rest of the night. He sees a very blurry image of a small girl on it. It was his cousin, Nanako. Since Nanako is home alone, Naoto on her way to the Dojima residence tells Chie to grab everyone and enter the station with Yosuke and Teddy. Naoto blames herself for not thinking about the possibility that they didn't have to be seen on TV, only heard. Nanako was interviewed and had her full name and a photo of her released in the local newspaper after she was supposed to remain anonymous. Yosuke, Kanji, and Teddy barge into the interrogation room, which at that moment Dojima finds out that Nanako had been kidnapped. Dojima immediately heads out to try and find Nanako himself. As the rest of the investigation team barges into the room, they all go over the information they have in order to get Adachi to understand the situation. The team first thought that the culprit was someone Nanako personally knew, since she doesn't open the door for strangers. Naoto suggests that the culprit has to be carrying a large screen TV around, considering each person that was kidnapped was thrown into the TV almost immediately. The killer would have to be using a large vehicle in order to carry something so large, but also be a car that no one would look twice at. The only vehicle capable of not rousing suspicion will be a delivery truck. Plus, the delivery man would be the same every time as it's a local company, so Nanako would have to be at least familiar with the person. Dachi looks at the list of suspects Dojima put together to reinvestigate the first murder case, and a delivery man is mentioned. The delivery man is the former secretary involved in the scandal mentioned near the beginning of the game, Taro Namatame. Adachi warns Dojima about this, and as he hears this, he immediately heads over to see Namatame and begins to chase after his delivery truck. Once Namatame realizes this, he intentionally crashes in order to get away from the police and injures Dojima as well. Inside the truck, Naoto finds a large TV as well as his diary with all the victims listed. Hearing all this information fully convinces Adachi that Namatame is the culprit. The group inferred that Namatame climbed into the TV to get away. Now knowing exactly where Nanako was inside the TV world, they race to her dungeon, which looks exactly like heaven. It turns out that Namatame really did dive into the TV. Namatame recognizes the ones he kidnapped as people he had saved without clarifying what that means. He admits to kidnapping everyone and also believes the Midnight Channel is a place where people needing to be saved appeared. The group tries to detain Namatame and save Nanako, but he becomes possessed and turns into Kuni no Sagiri, the god of fog. Once he was defeated with the team's best effort, they brought Nanako to the hospital. It turns out that the long exposure to the TV world had made both Nanako and Namatame very sick. As time passed, eventually a thick fog had set in. Narukami checked the Midnight Channel to make sure Nanako was safe. On his way to school the next day, he noticed that the fog from yesterday had yet to disappear. The group starts to realize that the fog is getting thicker. Chie even comes up with the idea that maybe the fog from the TV world is spilling out into their world. Kanji tells everyone to put on their glasses to see if the fog clears. The fog clears since their glasses only worked on the fog inside the TV. Chie's theory was spot on. Narukami gets a sudden call from Adachi telling you Nanako's condition had gotten worse. Everyone rushes to the hospital to see how Nanako was doing.
Doctor. Big Bro.
Nanako! Nanako!
I'm sorry, sir.
As Dojima leaves Nanako's room, Adachi walks by and realizes that Dojima is on his way to see Namatame. Adachi drags Dojima back to his room, leaving Namatame's room unguarded. This is the exact moment Teddy disappears because of his guilt. The team heads inside because of a loud noise they heard. The team collectively blames Namatame for Nanako's death. As Namatame tries to plead his innocence, the Midnight Channel turns on, surprising everyone. Namatame's shadow claims he failed to save Nanako and how the law won't be able to convict him. At this point, Yosuke and Kanji are dead set on throwing Namatame into the TV. Narukami tells Yosuke that something about this whole situation is bothering him. The group doesn't actually know about Namatame's feelings from his perspective. The group has a lot of unanswered questions, but since Namatame is in no condition for questioning, they leave him alone for the night. On their way out of Namatame's room, a nurse calls all of them to go see Nanako. Nanako had been resuscitated after her heart and lungs had failed. The next day, the group discussed how inconsistent Namatame's motives were. He had no motives for murdering the announcer. Namatame wanted to save people, so why would he believe murdering someone is saving if he referred to the people that were still alive as people he had saved? He also mentioned how he failed to save Nanako. They noticed how odd the wording of the warning letters sounded, using words like kill or don't rescue. Also, the grammar is off as if someone else had written them. With this in mind, they decide to try and get into Namatame's room to hear his side of the story. After their pretty shabby plan worked, they all went into Namatame's room to question him. Before listening to his story, Narukami asked him some questions. It turns out that saving isn't killing people. The first person he put inside the TV was Yukiko instead of it being Mayumi, which everyone initially believed he had done. When asked about the warning letters, he had no idea what they were talking about. Namatame tells the group the story from his perspective. One night, after the scandal had gone mainstream and he lost contact with Mayumi, he returned to his parents' home and decided to look into the blank TV because of a rumor he had heard. He found out he had the power to enter the TV when he reached out for Mayumi when she appeared on the Midnight Channel. The next day he had heard that Mayumi was found dead. He thought about the image again as if it were a message calling out to him to save them. The next time the Midnight Channel came on, he saw the girl that had found Mayumi's body, Saki Kenishi. He took the same message as the one with Mayumi, but instead tried talking to her and told her to be careful. The next day, the police had found her dead and he thought about how he couldn't do anything about it. After seeing the next Midnight Channel message from Yukiko, he decided to place her inside the TV because the reaction she gave him made it seem like a place should be safe. It was only until he dove into the TV that he learned how horrible it was. Namatame begs the group to find out who really killed Mayumi. Later that day, the team goes to check on Nanako and they decide to reopen the investigation of the first two cases. After a long day of not finding anything, the group decides to discuss what they had found. It appears that everyone had forgotten about the original two murders. Narukami steps outside in order to think, who in town would have a connection to Mayumi Yamano and Saki Kenishi, but also be in a position to observe the group and have the ability to walk up to the Dojima household. Narukami recalls what had been discussed and doesn't rule out the possibility that the true culprit could actually be Dojima's partner, Toru Adachi. After bringing this up with your friends, many oddities came up, such as, he was guarding the announcer the day before she had gone missing. He questioned Saki several times regardless of her strong alibi, and with his position in the police force, he could use it to destroy any evidence leading toward him. They decide to head to the hospital where Adachi was heading to get ready for Namatame's transportation. When asked about the warning letter, Adachi says that the location of it slipped his mind. The last thing they told him was that they knew for certain Namatame didn't kill the first two victims and that they thought Adachi had done it. Adachi slips up and makes a run for it and jumps inside the TV to hide. After Teddy comes back once he found out Nanako had been resuscitated, he decides to help the group look for Adachi. Adachi tells you what he did to Mayumi. He was her bodyguard while she stayed at the Amagi Inn. Once Adachi had found out that the rumor was true, he pushed Mayumi inside the TV. He even pushed Saki into the TV when he was interrogating her. He tricked Namatame into kidnapping and purposely gave the investigation team wrong information after he found out they were the ones responsible for rescuing, just to keep his game going. Adachi blames the world for killing them, not him. He set up this whole game just so he could have a little fun and make his life more entertaining. Figuring out Adachi as the main antagonist isn't something I even suspected in my first playthrough. Adachi having a social link really put the suspicion off of him for me. Once the group manages to make their way to Adachi, he explains to them how the world would be a lot better if everyone had turned into shadows. Everyone would be oblivious to what's happening and just go on with living as if nothing happened. The group attacks Adachi as he becomes a shadow. Once Adachi is defeated, he becomes possessed and turns into another god who rules the fog, Amano Sagiri. According to him, his desires are mankind's desires, and mankind's desires are to be enshrouded in fog and not face the hardships of reality. The investigation team figures out that the TV world isn't a world affected by people's hearts. Rather, it exists inside them instead. The mystery behind the existence of the Midnight Channel was actually just a window that shows people what they wish to see, which is why people who became famous through their appearance in television suddenly appeared on it. Namatame's other self appeared on the Midnight Channel because everyone would rather see him as the killer instead of learning the truth. Once the god who rules the fog is defeated, they accept the reason the investigation team gave them not to be enshrouded in fog. Amino Sagiri tells them that if mankind so wishes, he will return. Adachi returns to normal and is arrested under suspicion of murder, and the fog is lifted. Because the fog had disappeared, Nanako was able to make a full recovery and leave the hospital for Christmas and New Year's. After New Year's, Narukami wishes everyone a Happy New Year. When going to the Velvet Room to wish Margaret, Igor, and Marie a Happy New Year, Margaret tells him that Marie had gone missing. Margaret asks Narukami if he'd like her to look for her, even if it's dangerous. The next day, Yosuke and Teddy come over to plan a skiing trip over the break. As Narukami heads upstairs to go to sleep, he passes out for a week, postponing the ski trip. While he is passed out, he has multiple dreams of Marie in a strange place. She says goodbye to him. Once Narukami had recovered, Margaret calls him directly to give him an update on pinpointing Marie's location. After the school term had ended, the team heads out to go skiing. After skiing with a person of choice, in my case it was Naoto, you will find yourself lost on your way back to the lodge. Everyone finds you after a while, and Margaret drags everyone inside of the TV to tell you she had found where Marie was. Margaret mentions that the place inside the hollow forest they are in is the reality Marie created as a resting place. Marie regained her memories when she opened her heart to Narukami. The team has one day to save Marie from the hollow forest, or she'll disappear from their memories. Marie's dungeon is very unique. All of your equipment is replaced with dungeon-specific items that you can earn from looting absolutely everything. Another gimmick of the dungeon is that every battle your SP is halved, making all the SP recovery items you gain by looting pretty fucking useless. Almost everything in a dungeon is useless except the items to break the nullification of an elemental move. I know I sound like I'm shitting on Marie's dungeon and all, but I actually really enjoy it. It changes up the dungeon crawling formula, which I really liked. And aesthetically, it looks gorgeous. Once the group locates Marie, they notice how she has the same color eye as Amino Sagiri. It turns out Marie's true name is Kasumi no Okami, and she was acting as a spy for Amino and Kuni no Sagiri. Her role was to inform them what the wish of man was. Since Marie didn't have her memory, she had no idea she was doing it, but her body fulfilled her role. Marie claims that if she doesn't die in the hollow forest, the world will come to an end. She claims that the fog that left their world was sucked inside of her, and in order for their world to be peaceful, she will have to die. The group tries to reason with her until she attacks them to force them to leave. When Marie's will to fight diminishes, they try to come up with a way that the fog inside of her can be eliminated, but not her. She decides to put her mind to sleep so the fog can take over her body and they can get rid of it. The fight with Kasumi no Okami is really cool. Those items gained in the dungeon that break the nullification of an elemental move have an actual use in her boss fight. She repels all forms of attacks, and the only way to deal damage is to use those items or use elemental break moves. This boss fight is the only one in the entire game, rather the entire modern Persona series that requires the use of these. It also has one of the best battle themes in the entire series used in it. Once Kasumi is defeated, Marie turns back to normal and refuses to wake up. It's not until the group starts to believe she had actually died that she decides to wake up. With the fog gone, they return to the real world and the TV blows up. I actually enjoyed Marie's story. The enjoyment of it though simply relies on if you enjoy her character, kind of like her social link. The following day is Valentine's Day. See, in Persona 4 you have the option to romance all the women your age. You can choose to only romance one person, but if you really want to be a ladies' man, you can date them all. On Valentine's Day, you can choose one person to spend the day with. Once you choose that one girl, you have to sit back and tell every other one that you won't be hanging out with them. Since each of them have their own unique reaction to you declining them, they all have their own ways of making you feel like the biggest piece of shit. Other than that though, it's a cool day that every normal person would spend with Naoto. Valentine's Day is the last playable day in the game, as immediately after, it skips to March 19th. The game's epilogue are 2 days before Narukami leaves Inaba. This is where you say goodbye to everyone you met over the past year. You meet everyone at the Junes food court to reminisce about what happened throughout the year. Everyone seems curious about how the rumor of the Midnight Channel even began. The letter Nanako gave you from Adachi said that he and Namatame both learned it from someone they met when they first came to town. Something bothers Yosuke. He begins to think about how well all of these events fit perfectly together as if someone conducted it. Narukami spoke to Nanako and Dojima about the first day he came to town. Nanako mentioned the fact they stopped at a gas station so she could use the restroom, and when she came back, Narukami was talking to the weird gas attendant and became carsick. The town gets cloudier as Narukami tries to find the truth. He went to speak to the attendant and ask what they did to him. The attendant reveals that she gave Namatame's and Adachi's power, as well as yours, a little push in order for it to awaken. That attendant reveals herself to be the goddess, Izanami. She waits for the investigation team to face her in the TV world as a battle to test mankind's true strength. The group realizes that if Izanami is still around, the fog will never truly be gone and the whole incident will just happen again. Once prepared, the investigation team heads inside the TV to close the case once and for all. It turns out that Izanami created the Midnight Channel so the people could look through a window and lay their eyes upon those who wished to expose their hidden side. She claims all of this was done because the will of the masses wished for it. She wanted mankind to understand each other, but because of its anxiety, the desire to compare ourselves to others grew. They only saw and believed what they wanted to. Because of this, Izanami came to the conclusion that mankind's desire is to be enshrouded in fog. Izanami summons fog around her, revealing her gigantic, cool-looking form, starting the final battle. It would seem that Izanami has little to no health despite having access to really powerful moves. This is until she becomes impervious to all attacks. Narukami uses the Orb of Sight Igor gave him earlier, revealing Izanami's true form. As the team battles against a literal god listening to a banger of a song, she becomes too powerful for them, and each party member gives into the fog as they sacrifice themselves just to save Narukami. He ends up giving into the desire of mankind as he seeps into the fog. Narukami lies there almost as a lifeless corpse in the fog, hearing all the bonds he formed encouraging him, giving him the strength to get back up. Narukami is given access to the World Arcana, transforming his persona, Izanagi, into Izanagi no Okami. With his ultimate persona in his hands, he shows Izanami the true power of mankind and fucking blasts her with the truth. With Izanami defeated, the TV world returns to its original state, uniting the investigation team. It turns out Tsugiri and Izanami were all a part of Marie many years ago, so they all returned to her once they had all been defeated. Her real name, for real this time, is Izanami no Mikoto. The day passes and everyone sees Narukami off at the train station. As he leaves Inaba, all of his friends run alongside him, hoping to see him very soon. And that is Persona 4 Golden. The game would end here if Marie's social link wasn't completed, but something else this game added was a little epilogue at the end of the game that shows you how all the characters had changed since the last time you saw them. Narukami has a surprise party welcoming him back, and Marie becomes the weather girl at the local station. She uses her power to control the weather while Narukami is visiting. He gets a celebratory chant from everyone as the game closes out into its credits. One quick note, I wanted to go back when the choices were given between letting Namatame live and throwing him in the TV. If you decide to throw Namatame into the TV, the world continues to be enshrouded in fog, and your cousin Nanako is never brought back to life. Losing a loved one is what the player gets for not being able to learn the truth. I'm not sure if you could tell, but I absolutely adore this game. If you were to compare this to every other Persona game, you could say that this is the most upbeat game ever made. But this game feels much more than that to me. I am in no way saying the other games are bad, but Persona 4 is something else. It's a game that I can thoroughly enjoy time and time again, and provides some of the best music I think I've ever heard. The game is currently available on Steam right now for a cheap price, and it's even coming to every console on this planet within the next year. So, in my opinion, I think this year is the best year to get into Persona.
He's really gone.
It's sad that he won't be around, but we will be okay, right guys?
Doesn't matter how far apart we are. The bonds we've made will remain strong. Everyone's heart is connected to the people they know and trust. It's those bonds that let us all search for our purpose in life. As long as it's a purpose you believe in, there will always be someone who can help you fulfill it. You, me, and everyone else, there are no barriers. Our hearts are one, right, Sensei?